How do you force the consumer and government simultaneously to stop spending when they've got this complete willingness? How do you disincent them enough?
If the Federal Reserve allowed interest rates to rise to where the market would place them, credit card lending would stop. The banks would not be extending the credit. They couldn't afford it. There'd just be no profit in the business. There's only profit because they could still borrow at 5 or 6% from the Fed and loan to consumers at 21%, and there's enough margin in there to eat up what
make up
lose.
For delinquencies and make a good business.
But if interest rates went up to 10, 12%, they couldn't. And the other thing is, remember, all these
Can I interrupt you? Was that the
argument
argument you made at the end of the financial crisis? You made a prediction about credit cards that would also happen in 08, 09 that didn't actually happen. But were you basing
it would have happened, but the government bailed everybody out.
But you're making that same point, I'm saying.
Well, it
right?
should. Look, mate, the government has undermined the financial system with its subsidies and guarantees, right? All the bank deposits are guaranteed by the government. The banks do all sorts of reckless things because of the government that they never would do in a free market. And artificially low interest rates are a big part of that. But there are other things that the government does that distort the markets and that lead to excess consumption. Remember, we have this phony economy that's based 70% on consumer spending, and consumers can only spend if they can keep borrowing. And so they're facilitating that. And one of the really dangerous things with these credit cards, and I've been talking about this, is once you have so much credit card debt that you can never pay it back. Once you realize that you can't pay it back, your incentive is just to keep running it up even higher, because you're just going to go bankrupt, and so you might as well go out with a bang. So if I owe $100,000, I might as well owe $200,000. It's because I'm spending money that I know I'm never going to pay back, which is a moral hazard in and of itself. Because now I want to start buying as much stuff as I can on credit, because I know after I go bankrupt, I won't be able to buy anything. So I might as well buy, because when you go bankrupt with a credit card debt, they don't go and repossess all the stuff that you bought. You get to keep everything you bought, right? The credit card debt isn't secured by all the merchandise that you bought or the vacations that you took. So it's free money as far as a lot of people are concerned. So the moral hazard there is enormous as people are running up debt. And they did the same thing with student loans, and now it's even worse. I mean, the reason that college is so expensive is because the government guaranteed student loans. Before the government started doing that, college was cheap. Even Ivy League colleges weren't that expensive, and they never really raised prices. I mean, you can go back in time, maybe every 50 years, Harvard would raise its price a little bit, or Yale would raise its price, but, the price would be the same for decades. But what happened in the 1960s, late 1960s, they lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. Well, 18 is when you start college. So now all the politicians started to try to buy the votes of the students by promising government aid, guaranteed student loans. Because like in my dad's generation, he worked at the wait.
Wait,
let me finish.
They lowered, this is a very important point you're making. They lowered voting age from 1960 from 21 to 18?
They passed what amendment lowered the voting age? 21st Amendment, but they lowered the vote. Oh no, they lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. Right, and so now politicians wanted to get 18-year-olds to vote for them, and they're going to college. So they said, "Hey, we're going to make it easier." My dad and all of his friends who didn't have a lot of money, my grandparents were lower middle class. So my dad worked his way through college. He had a summer job waiting tables, and that was common. People worked their way through college, and then they graduated with no debt. Well, what the politicians told the kids is, why should you have to work over the summer? You're young, go to the beach, travel around Europe. We'll guarantee loans. We'll get banks to loan you money so that you can go to college, and then you'll pay back the loans after you graduate when you have a good job and have a high salary. And so the students loved it. They voted for the politicians who provided it. But the real winners were the colleges. Because the minute the colleges saw that students had access, their customers, to all this government money, they started jacking up prices. And then as they raised prices, the government kept raising the loan limits that they would guarantee. And then it was just a spiral. And so college costs went through the roof because of government subsidies. Now it's even worse because now they want to forgive the student loans. And so now the message they're sending to students is borrow as much as you possibly can because you're never going to have to pay it back. And the colleges are like, this is fantastic. We could really jack our prices up now because no one gives a damn what we charge because no one's going to have to pay. I mean, pretty soon they might give you a free car when you enroll in a college. I mean, it doesn't matter because no one's going to have to pay the debt off. It's just going to be, so it's an even worse moral hazard. Now you see these these left-wing politicians complaining about all the student debt. It's their fault. If it wasn't for the government, college would be cheap and nobody would have borrowed any money. They enriched the universities, they enriched the bureaucracies there at the expense of the students, of their parents. But now they've made it work. But they corrupt, the government corrupts everything they get involved in.
Peter, what made Nixon eventually sign off on this, thinking this is a good idea?
Well, never. First of all, he thought it was temporary. He really did. And in fact, he said that in his initial speech.
There's two things he did that he thought was temporary.
Well, let me tell you. So look, Nixon, he tried devaluation twice. So he devalued the dollar officially twice. And he raised the price of gold from $35 an ounce up to about 42 or for whatever it is. It's an odd number. But Nixon had a real difficult choice to make. And unfortunately, he took the politically expedient one. What he could have done, because gold prices needed to rise. So he could have devalued the dollar officially by a much greater amount, which would have been very embarrassing for him to do. Or he could have allowed the economy to deflate, allowed prices to come down so that the gold price didn't have to go up. But a massive deflation would have been, a very difficult thing, right? Because we had printed all this money to fight the Vietnam War, to go to the moon, the war on poverty. So we either needed to devalue the dollar or have deflation and a depression. And so Nixon didn't want to do either of those. And so he took the third option, which was, I'm going to basically just go off the gold standard completely. And so he didn't have to make one of those two choices, but I think he opted for something even worse, which ushered in all the inflation. I mean, we had all that inflation in the 1970s for a reason. It's not an accident that we went off the gold standard in 71 and then we had a decade of massive inflation. And now we're going to have a decade of even more inflation as the world goes off the dollar standard.